Welcome to Daily Dose of Knowledge. There is a type of person who will make you feel like the most special human alive. And then, without warning, make you question whether you ever mattered at all. Subscribe so you never miss what comes next. This one will change how you see certain people in your life forever. Most people think narcissism is vanity. A person who loves themselves too much. That is not what narcissism is. That definition is wrong in almost every way that matters. Narcissistic personality disorder is a clinical condition. It affects an estimated 1% of the general population. But subclinical narcissism, the traits without the full diagnosis, is far more common and far more consequential. To understand narcissism, you have to understand what is actually underneath it, not confidence, not self-love. A profound and fragile emptiness that the narcissist spends their entire life trying to conceal. Psychologists call this the narcissistic wound. A deep core of shame, inadequacy, and self-loathing buried beneath the surface presentation. The grandiosity is not the truth of the narcissist. It is the armor, built to protect the wound from ever being seen. This distinction matters because it explains everything that follows. Every behavior, every pattern, every act of cruelty. The narcissist does not hurt people because they feel powerful. They hurt people because they feel terrified. Terrified that the wound will be exposed. Terrified that someone will see what is underneath the armor. And anyone who gets close enough to threaten that exposure becomes a target. Now let us talk about how narcissism develops. Because it does not appear from nowhere. Research points to two primary developmental pathways. The first is childhood neglect or emotional unavailability from caregivers. The child who is never truly seen, never truly validated, learns to construct a false self. A version of themselves that demands the recognition the real self was never given. The second pathway is the opposite. Excessive idealization. The child told they are exceptional, special, above others, without the foundation of genuine unconditional love beneath it. Both pathways produce the same result. An adult who needs external validation the way other people need oxygen. Psychologists call this narcissistic supply. The constant stream of admiration, attention, and deference that the narcissist requires to maintain psychological stability. Without it, the armor cracks. The wound surfaces, and the narcissist becomes dangerous. Now let us talk about what narcissism actually looks like in a relationship, because this is where the damage occurs. Phase 1 is idealization. The narcissist is extraordinary at the beginning. Attentive, charming, perceptive. They study their target. They learn what that person needs most. Validation, security, excitement, and they deliver it with precision. This is not love. It is an acquisition strategy. The target is being recruited as a source of narcissistic supply. The target feels uniquely seen, uniquely chosen, like they have finally met someone who truly understands them. What they have actually met is someone who has learned to reflect their own desires back at them with perfect accuracy. Phase 2 is devaluation. Once the narcissist has secured the attachment, the mask begins to slip. Criticism appears, small at first. A comment about how the target dresses, a dismissal of something they said. The target, already deeply attached, adjusts, tries harder, apologizes, believes the problem is theirs to fix. This is exactly what the narcissist requires. The adjustment confirms their superiority. The apology feeds the supply. The devaluation escalates slowly enough that the target rarely identifies the pattern until they are deep inside it. By the time the cruelty is undeniable, the target has reorganized their identity around the relationship. Leaving feels like losing themselves. Phase 3 is discard. When the narcissist has extracted sufficient supply or found a better source, they leave, often suddenly, often cruelly, often in a way designed to maximize the target's pain and minimize their own accountability. And sometimes they do not leave at all. They cycle. Idealization, devaluation, discard, hoovering. The renewed idealization, the cycle beginning again. Each cycle deepens the target's confusion. The return of the good version feels like proof that the relationship is worth saving. It is not proof, it is a technique. Conscious or not. Now let us talk about what prolonged exposure to a narcissist does to the people around them. Because this is the part most videos never cover. The first thing that goes is the target's sense of reality. Narcissists gaslight instinctively, not always deliberately. Often the narcissist genuinely believes their version of events. Their psychology requires it, but the effect on the target is the same. Over time, they stop trusting their own memory, their own perception, their own judgment. They begin to see themselves through the narcissist's frame: inadequate, oversensitive, lucky to be wanted at all. The second thing that goes is the target's identity. Narcissists require their partners to be extensions of themselves. Opinions that differ are threats. Interests that exist outside the relationship are competition. Friendships are potential supply sources to be controlled or eliminated. Slowly, the target's independent self is dismantled. Not all at once, piece by piece, until the person looking back in the mirror is almost unrecognizable. The third thing that goes is the target's nervous system. Living with a narcissist produces chronic hypervigilance. The target learns to read microexpressions, tone shifts, silences, to anticipate the next eruption before it arrives. This is a survival adaptation. And it is also a form of prolonged psychological trauma. Researchers have found that people who spend extended time in narcissistic relationships show measurable changes in cortisol levels, sleep architecture, and threat detection sensitivity. The body keeps the score. Long after the relationship ends, the nervous system remains on alert. This is why recovery from narcissistic abuse takes longer than people expect. The damage is not just emotional, it is neurological. Now let us talk about the different faces of narcissism. Because the grandiose, arrogant type is only one of them. The covert narcissist is arguably more dangerous. They present as humble, self-sacrificing, perpetually victimized. Where the grandiose narcissist demands admiration openly, the covert narcissist demands it through guilt, martyrdom, and quiet manipulation. They are harder to identify, harder to leave, and just as capable of dismantling the people around them. There is also the communal narcissist, the person whose narcissistic supply comes from being seen as the most generous, most virtuous, most selfless person in the room. The performance of goodness as a vehicle for superiority. The charity work that is really about applause. The kindness that disappears the moment no one is watching. Now let us talk about what you do with all of this. Because the answer is not simple, and anyone who tells you it is has not been inside one of these relationships. The first thing is recognition, not labeling. Recognition of the pattern, the cycle, the way your reality has been systematically replaced. This recognition is painful. It requires accepting that the person who made you feel most seen was also the person most committed to ensuring you never truly were. The second thing is understanding that you cannot fix this. You cannot love a narcissist into security. You cannot be good enough to stop the devaluation. The wound that drives narcissism was created decades before you arrived. It is not yours to heal. It was never yours to heal. The third thing is rebuilding. The identity that was dismantled piece by piece must be reconstructed the same way. Slowly, deliberately, with support. Therapy specifically designed for narcissistic abuse. Recovery addresses both the cognitive distortions and the nervous system damage. Both must be treated. The fourth thing, and this is the one people resist most, is accepting that the person you fell in love with may never have fully existed. The version you loved was a reflection, constructed from your own needs and desires and projected back at you with extraordinary skill. Grieving that is not weakness. It is the most honest thing you can do. You are grieving something real, the relationship you believed you had. The person capable of that relationship simply was not there. What remains after that grief, for most people who do the work, is something unexpected. A clearer sense of self than they had before. Because the process of reconstructing an identity that was dismantled forces a level of self-examination most people never undertake voluntarily. You find out what you actually value, what you actually need, what you will and will not accept. And you find out you are stronger than the relationship made you believe. Narcissism leaves damage. That is true. But it also leaves behind people who have been forced to understand themselves at a depth that most lives never demand. If this gave you something real, subscribe to Daily Dose of Knowledge. Drop a comment with what you recognized in yourself or someone you know. Explore our videos on psychology, human behavior, self-help, science, history, relationships, and the forces shaping modern life. There is always something here that will shift the way you think.